Title: The Cobbler's Week. Making a pair of shoes in 1500 theme. From rawhide to finished footwear. Each step in shoemaking is slow, methodical, and rooted in centuries-old routine. Structure: 10 segments unfolding over a working week in a quiet shoemaker's workshop. Introduction: worn hands, quiet tools, ambient suggestion, low fire, crackling, muffled creak of wooden floorboards, gentle brushing of leather. Imagine yourself in a narrow timber-framed workshop where the only sound is the creak of a leather apron as its wearer bends to work. A faint scent of oiled hide lingers in the still air, mingling with the sharper temps of beeswax and soot. Outside, horses clop over cobbles, and a cockerel calls once more before falling silent for the day. But inside it is quiet. Still, this is the world of a cobbler, a tradesman of patience, not speed, of rhythm, not rush. His life marked not by clocks, but by the gradual making of things pair by pair, stitch by stitch. In this soft-spoken journey, we will follow a single pair of shoes as they take shape in the hands of one such man. The year is 1500. The place an English town not far from the edge of the forest, where tanners, wool merchants, and saddlers work side by side in quiet diligence. You won't find drama here. No royal decrees or battles. Just one man, his bench, and the weight of a task done the old way. Let us begin, at the beginning, with nothing more than a piece of hide, rough and unshaped yet, already full of purpose. Segment 1. Selecting and softening leather ambient suggestion. Slow rustle of hides being moved. Faint squeak of a wooden bucket. Occasional drip of water. The hides are stacked in the corner of the workshop, each one rolled or folded, thick with memory. Cowhide, calfskin, a few thinner sheaths of goats for finer work. They smell earthy, touched with lime and smoke, remnants of the tanning process still clinging to their fibers. The cobbler knows each by touch. He runs his fingers across the surface, seeking firmness, but not rigidity. Flex, but not flimsiness. For the soul, he needs something strong enough to walk upon for years, yet supple enough to shape under pressure. He pulls one hide forward, a broad piece of ox leather. Heavy, thick, slightly uneven at the edges where it once met flesh and fur. He unrolls it carefully across the bench, weighing down each corner with smooth river stones. The surface bears marks, not flaws, but character. A crease where the leg once bent. A scar, faint and long-healed. The cobbler examines these, not to avoid them, but to know them. Each imperfection must be considered before cutting. Before anything else, the leather must be softened. He cuts the piece into smaller sections, one destined for the sole, another for the upper, a third for the tongue. These are soaked separately in shallow wooden tubs, each filled with water and a bit of stale ale. The liquid seeps slowly into the hide, darkening it, releasing its stiffness. The soaking takes time, hours, not minutes. While he waits, he tends to his tools. A sharp awl, a heavy knife, a rasp made from shark skin, worn smooth from use. He oils the handles with care, wraps a few in cloths for better grip. These are not factory tools, they are personal, passed down, repaired again and again. Later in the day, he returns to the tubs. The hides are pliable now. He lifts them with both hands, water dripping back into the pails. The smell is stronger, now musky, faintly bitter, but not unpleasant. He places the pieces on the bench, covers them with a damp cloth, and lets them breathe. Before nightfall, he'll wrap them in linen to keep them soft overnight. Outside, the street begins to quiet. Merchants pack their carts. Dogs bark in the alley. And somewhere, a tavern opens its shutters. But inside the workshop, the day ends as it began in calm. The cobbler extinguishes the small oil lamp and rests his tools beside the hides. Tomorrow, the real shaping begins. Segment 2. Measuring the customer's feet, ambient suggestion. Faint tapping of a stick on the floor. Soft murmur of voices. Creak of stool legs on planks. Morning light filters in through a small window, mottled by dust. The cobbler sits by his bench, linen cap slightly askew, and a warm cup of thin ale in hand. He is expecting someone. Not with urgency, but with quiet preparation. A knock comes not loud, just a gentle rap of knuckles on the doorframe. A customer steps in, lifting his cap in greeting. A weaver by trade, his gait bears the marks of long days spent standing. His shoes, what's left of them show, seem split wide and soles worn to softness. The cobbler nods and gestures toward the stool by the hearth. No need for chatter, just yet. They've known each other for years. The measuring begins without haste. The cobbler retrieves a narrow strip of vellum soft parchment, reused for such things, and a stick of charcoal, rubbed to a dull point. He motions for the man to remove his hose and place one foot, bare, upon the smooth wood of the bench. He traces the outline slowly, around the heel, curve of the arch, broad ball of the foot. The lines are gentle, not rushed. He takes note of a slight bunion, the flattened heel, the faint twist of the outer toes. The man does not speak. He has had shoes made before. He trusts the process. The cobbler measures not only the length and width, but the volume. He presses gently at the instep, takes note of pressure points, and measures the rise of the arch with a folded strip of leather marked in hand-cut notches. Then the other foot. The process repeats, but not identically. Feet are siblings, not twins. The left is broader. The toes are more curled. The heel bears the shadow of a heeled crack. These small variations matter especially when the shoe is stitched by hand. He writes notes in his small ledger, bound with a scrap of sheep's skin. It lists customers by trade, by size, and by habit. He knows which ones walk heavily and which ones drag their feet. He remembers who comes home wet-footed and who wears their shoes until they split like fruit. The measurements are done. Before the man leaves, the cobbler offers him a look at the last stand old one, shaped roughly to his form but worn down with time. He'll carve a new one, better fit, firmer arch, a smoother heel. The weaver thanks him quietly. They shake hands, not formally, but familiarly. Payment will come later, perhaps in coin, perhaps in a trade of linen. In this town, barter holds as much value as silver. As the man disappears into the sunlit lane, the cobbler returns to his bench. He places the vellum outlines on a wooden board and weighs them down with a smooth iron nail. They will guide the rest of the process. No step will be hurried. No cut rushed. These shoes will take the shape of the man, not just in size, but in rhythm. And so the second day passes, soft and slow, beneath the wooden beams and dust-speckled air. Segment 3. Cutting the upper and sole. Ambient suggestion. Gentle slicing of blade on leather. Occasional scrape of metal against wood. Wind fluttering faintly at the shutters. Now the cobbler begins the quiet work of shaping. The leather already softened from days of soaking in lye and limes, laid out carefully on the table. It's cowhide, this time. Not fresh, but well cured. Dark brown, with subtle variations in tone. The skin bears the faint memory of the animal's life creases from movement. A scar near the edge, mottling from sun or brush. The cobbler runs his hand over the surface slowly, palm down. He feels for any stiffness, any grain that might fight the blade. A good cut begins with understanding the hide. First, he chooses the portion for the sole. That leather must be firmer, cut from the thickest part, the bend, just above the haunch. It will bear the weight, the wear of cobblestones and mud paths. He marks the outline with a chalky white stick, using the vellum tracing from the weaver's foot. There is no haste here. The line must follow, not just the foot's shape, but the grain of the leather. Too close to the edge, and it will stretch. Too near a crease, and it will tear. With his knife, a short-handled blade honed to a fine curve, he begins the cut. The sound is soft, a steady glide. The edge slices through the leather like butter warmed by hand. He leans in slightly, steadying his other hand atop the hide to keep it from shifting. The sole is done. He places it aside, atop a worn linen cloth. Now the upper, the part that will wrap over the foot, stitched in shape to its form. This leather must be softer, more pliant. It comes from nearer the belly, where the hide is thinner and easier to bend. He cuts in mirror. One for the left, one for the right. He measures again to be sure, lays one atop the other to confirm symmetry. Even a half finger's difference can be felt after a day's walk. There are smaller pieces, two quarters, and vamps, tongue, and collar. Each part is marked, cut, and laid out in quiet procession on the bench. The cobbler pauses to oil the blade, wiping it with a bit of tallow and a cloth. A dull knife is a danger to leather and 2 fingers. He returns the knife to its place, always the same place, and begins trimming. Edges are smoothed, little slivers removed where thickness might rub the ankle. He uses a small curved blade for this, the kind passed down from his father's workshop. The grip is smooth from decades of use. Then, with a small awl, he pokes the first guide holes, just enough to show where the stitching will go later. Not too many, not too deep, just enough to lead the bore bristle through without tugging. Each piece is named, even if only in his mind: upper, sole, heel, tongue, all await assembly. Outside, the street is quiet. A dog barks in the distance. Somewhere, a bell rings, the midday bell from the priory. The cobbler doesn't look up. His day is measured not by the clock, but by the tasks at hand. And in this room, for now, only leather, knife, and the memory of footsteps remain. Segment 4. Stitching leather with bore, bristle, ambient suggestion. Faint, rhythmic pulling of thread, soft tapping on a wooden bench, wind at the shutter, distant clink of iron from the street. Now that each piece has been carefully cut, the cobbler moves on to a task of great patience, the slow stitching of leather. Using an age-old technique passed from hand to hand, father to son, master to apprentice. The thread is no ordinary cord. It is linen strong, tightly spun, and waxed by hand. He rubs it with beeswax until it gleams slightly under the morning light. The wax will protect it from water and help it slide smoothly through the leather's dense surface. And at its end, not a needle, but something more curious: a bore bristle. Long, stiff, and tapered to a gentle point, the bristle is split slightly at its base. Into this, the cobbler pushes the end of the thread, twisting it so it binds tightly. The result is something like a needle, but more forgiving, more flexible, to bend with the curve of the shoe, to move through the guide holes without splitting the leather. He threads a bristle onto each end of the cord. A stitch, in this method, is drawn from both sides at once. It is called a saddle stitch, stronger than any machine-made seam, resistant to unraveling even if one side breaks. He begins with the vamp and the quarters. With his awl, he enlarges each guide hole slightly. The tool has a slender metal point, mounted into a smooth wooden handle that rests comfortably in the palm. One gentle press, and the hole is ready. He pushes one bristle through, then the other, drawing the thread in a clean line, and pulls. The 2 ends meet, then tighten with a soft tick as the leather cinches close. Again, push, draw, tighten. The rhythm is slow, unhurried. Push, draw, tighten. Each stitch is identical in spacing, in tension. This, too, is part of the cobbler's artistry. A good pair of shoes is not just about durability, but quiet precision, how the pieces meet, how the line of the stitch runs smooth and even, without puckering. He moves down the line. It takes time, more than an hour, for a single upper. And that is only one side. The process will be repeated for the other foot, then again for the heel seams, and finally where the upper meets the sole. Stitch by stitch, the shoe begins to take form, not yet wearable, not yet even recognizable, but inching closer with every pass of thread. Sometimes, he sings under his breath, a low tune, a lullaby learned from his mother, or an old harvest song with no beginning and no end. The melody is barely there, just a line or two, lost in the rhythm of work. The light shifts slowly on the wooden bench. The oil lamp flickers slightly, though it's still day. The small window above the bench allows only a sliver of sun to pass. Outside, footsteps sound faintly. A cart rolls by. But the cobbler does not pause. This is the quietest part of the craft. Just hands and leather, thread and bristle, and a rhythm that has not changed in centuries. Segment 5. Punching holes and threading laces, ambient suggestion. Soft tapping of a small iron punch on leather. Occasional flick of thread, and the faint creak of a wooden stool. The stitched uppers are now complete, neatly curved and joined at the edges. firm in the hand but supple from hours of softening, stretching, and careful shaping. And yet, they remain unfinished, quietly waiting for the smallest of additions. The ones that bring closure and fit. The lacing holes. Imagine yourself seated beside the cobbler now, near the long bench where the light falls in a warm rectangle. He draws the shoe near and examines the curve of the opening, the part where the foot will slip inside, and where the laces will later cross to draw it snug. He picks up a small tool and iron punch with a short wooden handle, worn smooth where fingers have held it 1,000 times. The tip is slightly hollow, like the end of a pipe, sharpened to a perfect circle. With calm precision, he presses the punch against the leather's edge, just above the tongue, near the curve of the throat line. One light tap with a mallet. Pop! The hole is clean, round, crisp at the edges. He sets the tool aside and clears the tiny disc of leather from the bench. It falls silently to the floor, joining a scatter of other small, perfect circles like the seeds of a pomegranate. Again, he punches. And again. Each hole is spaced by eye, though his judgment is seasoned and exact. Not too close together, lest the leather tear, not too far apart, or the shoe won't close snugly. When the holes are done, perhaps 6 on each side, he lays the shoe down gently and takes up a long, narrow length of leather cord. This will be the lace. It was cut earlier in the week, from a strip of goatskin, bit firmer than cowhide, and better suited for long, thin pieces that must hold up under strain. He works it briefly between his fingers, warming it, coaxing it soft. Then he draws it through a small beeswax cake, once, twice, 3 times, until it slides smooth and gleaming. Threading begins. He moves slowly, with care, over and under, in a loose crisscross, just as you might see today on a pair of boots. The rhythm is gentle, unhurried. There is no need to pull it tight just yet. He finishes the lacing and sets the shoe down beside its twin. They are nearly shoes now, recognizable, symmetrical, even handsome in their plainness. But still, they lack shape. At this stage, they are like folded hides, flattened by time. They must be stretched, drawn upward and outward, pressed into form over a wooden foot. But for now, they rest. The cobbler wipes his hands on a cloth linen, kept in a little drawer with the other scraps. A few stray threads cling to his apron. He brushes them away, not out of fussiness, but habit, quiet order, maintained in small motions. Outside, the light has shifted once again. A swallow darts past the open window, just a blur. Farther off, someone calls for their child, a gentle voice, distant and muffled. Inside, the shoemaker leans back slightly, eyes resting on his work. There's no rush. This, too, is part of the rhythm, the pause between tasks, where time slows and breath returns to evenness. The shoes will wait, just as leather has always waited, to be shaped, stitched, and brought to life, one quiet step at a time. Segment 6. Soaking and stretching on the last ambient suggestion. Slow dripping of water into a wooden basin, the creak of leather tightening, the faint rasp of fingers smoothing material. Let us return to the cobbler's bench, where 2 near-finished shoes lie side by side, laced but still shapeless, soft as folded cloth. To become shoes in truth, they must be made to hold their form, and for that, they must be drawn over the last. The last is a wooden mold, carved in the shape of a foot. It is the quiet soul of shoemaking, never worn itself, yet shaping everything worn by others. Each cobbler might own several, slightly different widths, varying arches, some for men, some for women, some for children just beginning to walk. They are heavy in the hand, often burnished from use, their surfaces darkened with oil and time. But before the shoes can embrace their final form, the leather must be softened once again, this time with water. In the back corner of the workshop, a shallow wooden basin waits. Its sides are stained a silvery gray from many soakings. The cobbler pours a small jug of water in, cool and clear, and dips a cloth into it. Linen, as always, with patient, rhythmic strokes. He weights the insides of each shoe, carefully dampening the uppers, not soaked through, but pliable just enough for the fibers to yield. There is a scent in the air now, warm leather and clean water, earthy and faintly sweet. The sound of water dripping from the cloth is soft, a kind of gentle ticking. Once dampened, the shoes are ready for the last. The cobbler chooses one last, carved long ago by his father, perhaps, or by himself in younger years. It has a slight curve to the arch and a raised toe, matching the customer's own foot, as measured days ago. He places it on the bench and slides the leather over it, guiding it gently but firmly into place. There is resistance at first. The leather tightens, hesitates, but he knows how to coax it. His hands move steadily, smoothing the leather from heel to toe. With a wooden mallet, he taps the edges, encouraging the material to follow the contours of the last. The shape begins to emerge. A slope at the instep, a flare at the ball of the foot, the rounded silhouette of the toe. Around the edges of the sole, small tacks are used not to remain, but to hold the stretch while the leather dries. He presses each one in with care, never rushing, working in a soft rhythm that speaks of practice and patience. Now the shoe begins to look real, not a mere piece of leather. Stitched and stitched again, but a shape with purpose, with presence. A foot that will never move, but defines all movement to come. He does the same for the second shoe. The process repeats, wetting, stretching, tapping, tacking each mirrored movement, reinforcing the quiet cycle of the work. Then comes the waiting. The shoes must rest, sometimes for a day, sometimes longer, depending on the weather. The leather will shrink slightly as it dries, gripping the last and holding its new form like a memory etched deep. The cobbler places them on the shelf, where the light falls through in gentle stripes. Nearby, a cat curls among old scraps of hide. Dust hangs in the air, illuminated briefly before drifting back into stillness. This, too, is shoemaking. Not just cutting and stitching, but the spaces between wind materials. Listen to time, and the craft slows to match the rhythm of breath and wood and day. The shoes rest now, held in the embrace of the last, slowly becoming themselves. End of segment 6. Segment 7. Attaching the heel, ambient suggestion. The tap of hammer on wood, muffled by thick leather, a rustle of straw in the workshop corner. Slow breathing and the quiet creak of old floorboards. The shoes now sit, still damp but firming, shaped tightly around their wooden lasts. They've begun to resemble what they will be, but they remain incomplete. Their soles are flat and unfinished, lacking a feature that is both functional and subtle. The heel, in these days, is not a dramatic addition. It is modest in height, barely raised, built more for strength and longevity than for style. But even so, it is vital, protecting the rear of the shoe from wear and giving the foot a slightly lifted support during long hours of walking or standing. To begin, the cobbler selects, from a stack of cut heel pieces, small rectangles of tough leather, sometimes layered for thickness. These scraps are from older hides, cured to a darker shade than the uppers, and firmer to the touch. He runs his fingers over them, checking for flaws or soft spots. A single weak piece would fail quickly under pressure. Each heel is built by hand, one layer at a time. He places the first leather layer beneath the heel portion of the shoe sole. Then he brushes it lightly with a glue made from natural resins, boiled down and sticky, with a faintly sweet, woody smell. Pressing the leather into place, he tests the alignment by eye, turning the shoe slowly in his hands. The leather is coaxed to sit flush, firm but neat. Once set, he picks up his hammer, not a carpenter's hammer, but one shaped for cobblings, mauve-faced, with a well-worn handle, smoothed by years of use. He taps the heel gently, but with control, pressing the leather firmly against the sole. The sound is soft but satisfying, tap-tap, tap, a kind of work song played in rhythm. When the glue holds, he takes short iron nails, thin and handmade, and drives them through the heel layer, up into the sole. Each one goes in straight, not visible from above, but holding the heel secure for what may be years of daily wear. He places them carefully in a neat oval pattern. Another layer is added, and sometimes another, still depending on the height or the customer's request. Each is trimmed with a knife, its edges rounded slightly, then smoothed with a rasp. As the heel grows, so too does the sense of completion. Once nailed and shaped, he polishes the outer edge of the heel with a stone, rubbing slowly, in circles. It becomes smooth, dark, and slightly burnished. Often, a cobbler might use beeswax or lampblack rubbed into the edges, giving them a blackened, polished look. If the customer walks often on cobblestones or rides, the heel may be reinforced with a small piece of iron, called a heel plate. Not always used, but when it is, it's added now. A faint metal clink, a twist of the wrist, a final nail. The second shoe follows, of course. Everything done to one must be done to the other. Perfectly matched height, angle, firmness. A misaligned heel leads to sore feet, uneven gait, and quick wear. And so, in this dim corner of the shop, under the slope of a timber-bird roof, two shoes become more than stitched leather. They are strong now. They can bear weight. They are nearly ready for the road door, the muddy lane, or the wooden floors of a kitchen that never grows quiet. The cobbler leans back and stretches his fingers. Another step completes, but there is more still to do. Segment 9. Testing the fit. Ambient suggestion. Creaking of wood underfoot. Soft rustle of linen garments. The gentle scuff of leather soles on packed earth. Muffled conversation in the background. With the polish cooled and the leather supple, the shoes are nearly complete. But nearly is not enough. Before they can be wrapped, before payment is settled or satisfaction assumed, there is one final moment, a quiet ritual of trust and scrutiny. The fitting. The cobbler opens the door to his small workshop. Outside, the air is cooler now. The sun sits lower in the sky. A customer approaches, his steps careful, the faint scrape of worn footwear echoing on stone. He enters with a nod. Few words are spoken. Imagine him settling onto a bench worn smooth from years of use. The cobbler lifts one of the finished shoes and kneels before him. It is a moment of mutual patience, often repeated, yet never rushed. He eases the shoe onto the man's foot. The leather is firm but forgiving, molded slightly from the time spent on the last. The heel seats with a muted tap. The toe fits snugly, just brushing the front. Across the instep, the new shoe gently presses, close but not constricting. The cobbler runs a practiced hand along the sides, feeling for gaps, for strains in the stitching, for any unevenness that might cause discomfort after hours of walking. He nods once, satisfied. The second shoe follows, slower this time. The other foot is slightly larger. Most often he adjusts the tongue, works the heel with his thumb, and finally pulls the laces tight. Then, the customer stands. There's a pause. He takes a few tentative steps across the floor. The new soles creak faintly on the boards. The sound is low and pleasing. The man shifts his weight from one foot to the other, rocks back on his heels, then leans forward onto his toes. He walks again, a little faster this time. The cobbler watches silently. He looks not at the man's face, but at the way the shoes move. How the leather folds, how the heel strikes the ground, how the upper cradles the foot without pinching or slipping. The signs are subtle, but they tell the whole story. Eventually, the man returns to the bench. He nods, a small, tired smile. The fit is good. If there is a small tightness, the cobbler knows it will loosen in time. The warmth of the wearer's feet, the rhythm of daily motion, and the softness of the hide will shape the shoe more perfectly than any last ever could. In this moment, the craft is complete. There may be other adjustments in the future, a resoling, a stitch to be repaired. But for now, these shoes are ready to walk out into the world. The customer stands, lifts his old pair cracked, worn through at the toe, the heel nearly folded in on itself, and carries them under one arm. With a few quiet words, he offers his thanks. The cobbler, equally quiet, watches him leave. The door closes softly behind. And so, another pair walks out, bearing the memory of hours of work, quiet concentration, and the simple, enduring care of a man who makes things with his hands. Only one step remains now. A final wrap, a gesture of pride and protection.